We're just a couple of days away from December. And December in the Zen world means rohatsu. Rohatsu denotes the 8 days or the week leading up to the Buddha's awakening, Siddhartha's awakening. And we mark that on December 8th. This is historically a kind of intense period of practice. So in monasteries and at centers around the world, from the 1st until the morning of the 8th, people sit, and they sit a lot. Right? We make a gesture in this week toward the resolve of the Buddha, the resolve of Siddhartha, really, to save all beings. This vow, this vow that he didn't yet even know what to do with, but that led him to a tree, led him to a moment where he said, I will not get up again until I crack this. That resolve, the resolve that says, I will die trying. So if you're fortunate enough to live near a monastery, near a large center, near people who are creative with a big garage, you might get to do this. It's intense camping. Everyone's together and no one bathes. And you barely eat. In the monastery, we woke up at 3 and we went to bed at 9. And most of that schedule was zazen. It's such a focused time. And at the end, you're exhausted, you're beaten up, and there's this feeling of connection. I don't mean that, not to the universe, but to the depths of what this practice is. And if you're with others, to the other people in the room who just went through this with you. We in this community have never done rohatsu in that way. We haven't had the facilities, we haven't had the bandwidth, right? We haven't had the budget. All of the things that go into putting on that kind of retreat. I hope one day we will. But once again, here we are. We're meeting online. What do? No one wants to do 12 hours of zazen Zoom for a week. Probably no one does. And so we have to consider something else. Our gesture in this community is that we sit every day, as we always do, in the morning. On weekdays, we continue to sit every day, later in the morning from 9:30. But then in the evening, we also sit from 7 to 8. So we add the evening in so that it can be the way that you start the day and the way that you end it. That's all. It's silent. It's not a big deal. So I want to invite you first to join us this next week in sitting a little bit more and sitting with maybe a clearer intention, a clearer sense of resolve. But in doing that, I also want to offer a kind of a hint about how we take up this kind of practice. The way I see it is that when we take on a practice in terms of duration, like a week or a month or 3 months, the way to hold that, especially when we aren't in a container that's holding us, is to do 2 things. One is to commit to doing something. And the second is to commit to letting something go. The doing, there's an easy way to do that. Here, you could say, I'm going to sit every day, or I'm going to sit twice a day, or I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to start with the vows every day. This is active and it's concrete and it's measurable. It's scheduled. You say, I'm going to do this. But the other part is what separates this from a New Year's resolution. If I say I'm going to start running every day, I just commit. And maybe I know how to form that habit, and maybe I don't. But if I can just check the box at the end of the day, done. When we take something up as spiritual practice, what we're really doing, in a way, is we're insisting to ourselves that we not forget. That we keep a kind of thread through that time. Now, the Catholics understand this very, very well with Lent. They take 40 days, just like Jesus' 40 days in the desert. And they take up some sort of discipline. They let go of something that maybe for some that they think is bad for them, but for some, it's just something they want, so that they'll notice that it's gone. And in this way, in this simple way, they force themselves to know every day this is Lent, for whatever that means for them. Ramadan is the same. More intense, but the same. You can frame these kinds of choices, these kinds of actions in terms of your relationship with God. You can frame these kinds of choices in terms of good and bad. But here, in what we do, it's much simpler. It's a cue. In the same way that you might leave your running shoes next to the door so that you don't forget to run, you take something away so that every time that thing is present, every time that thing is available, you're reminded of something, and that something is this resolve. It's not that this is a metaphor for resolve. It isn't that if you give up coffee in the next week, you're somehow enacting the resolve of Siddhartha beneath the Bodhi tree. That's not it. We don't have to get absurd. It's that we decide not only for ourselves as Zen practitioners, but for ourselves in community, knowing that thousands of other practitioners are doing this at the same time. Some by sitting for 12 hours a day, and some by doing what we're doing. We choose not to lose sight of that resolve in ourselves. And so we let go. In the monastery, it's so easy because everything is taken away. Just by showing up, you give up so much. But that's not us. And so even if it seems silly or pointless or arbitrary, all of which it is, I want to invite you in the next week to think of something that you can let go of. Not because that thing is bad, not because that's the problem, but because there's something you want not to forget. If you give up sweets for the week every time cookies are passed around, yes, you want that. But in the wanting of that is a recognition of what you're doing. The depths of what you're doing and where you come from in this tradition. These are small gestures that we make in our lives. And the fact of it is no one will ever know. You will get no points, not from me, not from the community. You won't get a gold star. You won't get your name on the board. because you gave up something you love, something you crave, something you automatically do every day. Only you will know. And if you think about it too hard, you'll be left only with the question of what did it mean? Why did I even do that? And so I'll answer in advance, it didn't mean anything. And yet, for those 7 days, up until that morning, maybe you kept this practice at the front of your mind. You kept vow at the front of your mind. And you got a deeper taste of what it is to do that all the time. To have that flavor in every breath. And then you do with that what you want. And that's where I'll stop.